They say there's no shortcut to success, that there's no magic key that can take an ordinary life and unlock extraordinary wealth. But what if I told you that one man, after studying the most powerful, the most unstoppable, the most self-made millionaires of his time, discovered a single habit that changed everything? Not a trick, not a secret society handshake, a habit, a way of thinking and living so precise, so relentless, that it became the thread linking steel magnates, automotive pioneers, inventors, and visionaries across decades. Napoleon Hill didn't just write about success, he dissected it. He spent 20 years in the company of the Titans, Andrew Carnegie, Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, Charles Schwab, Alexander Graham Bell. He searched for patterns, and in the clutter of their decisions, their failures, their victories, he found one golden principle that none of them could live without. It is the habit of definiteness of purpose, the relentless pursuit of one clearly defined aim until it becomes reality. Hill said there is one quality which one must possess to win, and that is definiteness of purpose, the knowledge of what one wants and a burning desire to possess it. Do not mistake this for a casual goal. This is not a New Year's resolution scribbled in a notebook you'll throw away in a month. Definiteness of purpose is the difference between a wish and a destiny. It is the moment when you stop hoping for success and decide to build it. Most people wake up in the morning with no clear aim. They drift like a ship without a compass, pulled by the current of other people's demands, and so their energy is scattered, their talent is wasted, their days are full, but their lives are empty. But the rare few, the millionaires in money and in spirit, choose one aim, and they pour themselves into it completely. Their time, their thoughts, their heartbeats, all bent in one direction. Like a river forced into a narrow channel, their focus builds power until it cuts through the rock standing in its way. Andrew Carnegie told Hill, "You can put all your eggs in one basket if you control that basket." Henry Ford was told his vision for an affordable automobile was impossible. He didn't build a dozen businesses, he built one, and he built it until the world had no choice but to notice. Thomas Edison didn't try to master every invention at once. He stayed in the laboratory until the light bulb burned bright enough to blind his critics. And here is the truth that no one wants to admit. Definiteness of purpose is not hard to understand. It is hard to commit to. It demands sacrifice. It demands the death of distractions. It demands you stop flirting with half measures and start living like your goal is oxygen and you are suffocating without it. But when you do, when you align every choice, every movement, every breath with one burning aim, you will find the world bending in ways you cannot explain. Opportunities appear. The right people walk into your life. The wrong people walk out. And every obstacle becomes not a dead end, but a test, a question the universe asks to see if you truly deserve what you're chasing. This habit, this all-consuming purpose, is not about greed. It is about creation. The great fortunes, Hill said, are built not by those who wanted money for money's sake, but by those who wanted to create something so valuable that money became an unavoidable reward. Carnegie wanted to build the steel that would raise the cities of America. Ford wanted to move the common man faster than the fastest horse. Edison wanted to put light in every home. Their definiteness of purpose gave them wealth, but their wealth was never the purpose. The purpose was bigger than them, and that is why it lasted longer than their lifetimes. And now the question is not whether this habit works. The question is whether you will make it yours. Because if you will step into the same current that carried the ordinary to the extraordinary. And if you won't, you will drift with the rest, moving but never arriving. But before you claim this habit for yourself, you must understand what it will cost you. Because every great truth has a price. Definiteness of purpose is not simply about knowing where you are going. It is about closing every other door, and that terrifies people. Most will never commit fully because they are addicted to options. They keep a safety net, a backup plan, a second dream in case the first one fails, but they scatter their attention like seeds in the wind, hoping something will grow. But the soil of half-hearted effort yields nothing worth keeping. Andrew Carnegie told Napoleon Hill that the first step toward his fortune was to pick one aim and burn the ships. No way back, no plan B. When you know there is no retreat, you will advance with a level of courage you didn't know you possessed. The world will call this reckless. They will say you are gambling with your future. But you are not gambling. You are eliminating the weakness that comes from divided loyalty. You cannot serve two masters. You cannot build two empires at once. You cannot live for comfort and for greatness in the same breath. Definiteness of purpose requires more than thought. It demands obsession. It must saturate your mind until it seeps into your conversations, your dreams, the way you walk, the way you breathe. People will feel it before you speak. They will see it in your eyes, that fire that says, "I am going somewhere and I will not be stopped." Look at Henry Ford. He was not a genius mechanic. He did not have the finest education, but he had a single idea that consumed him: to create an affordable automobile for the masses. Every failure, every bankruptcy, every laughing critic only drove him deeper into that purpose. And when his vision came to life, it didn't just make him rich, it transformed an entire industry. This is what Hill meant when he said that purpose is the starting point of all achievement. It is the blueprint of the mind. Before the building rises, the architect draws the plan. Your life is the building, your purpose is the plan. And without it, you are just stacking bricks in the dark, hoping they will form something worth keeping. Here is the part most people miss, and this is where mindset and philosophy intertwine. Definiteness of purpose is not only about what you want, it is about why you want it. If your purpose is shallow, your resolve will be shallow. If your goal is only money, the moment the road becomes hard, you will quit. But if your purpose is tied to something deeper, something that serves others, something that leaves a mark, you will endure storms that would break lesser men. Edison did not stay in his laboratory for years because he wanted a bigger bank account. He stayed because he could see the world lit with his invention, and until that vision was real, he was not finished. Carnegie's fortune came from steel, but his legacy came from libraries, from giving away more than $350 million in his lifetime to education and public good. Ford's riches came from automobiles, but his impact came from giving everyday families mobility, freedom, and opportunity. Purpose is the compass. Wealth is the byproduct. And when you live by this law, you will find yourself doing the impossible because the impossible becomes necessary. Hill once said, what the mind can conceive and believe it can achieve. But belief alone is not enough. It must be belief tied to an unshakable, definite aim and acted upon with relentless persistence. Do you see now why this habit transforms the ordinary into the extraordinary? It is not magic. It is not luck. It is focus, fortified by desire, fueled by discipline, and guided by meaning. And here's the warning. Once you embrace this habit, you will never see the world the same way again. The drift of mediocrity will become unbearable. The small talk of aimless lives will bore you. And the only company you will seek is that of those who are also building something that will outlive them. Once you set your life on the foundation of a definite purpose, the universe will test you. It will not hand you the crown the moment you declare your intention. It will send storms. It will send resistance. It will send doubt, not to destroy you, but to forge you into the kind of person who can carry the weight of what you seek. Napoleon Hill called this temporary defeat the phase where the world asks, do you truly want this, or are you only pretending? It is here that most turn back. They think the presence of hardship means they are on the wrong path, when in reality, it means they are on the only path that leads anywhere worth going. Think of the miner who stopped digging 3 feet from gold. The earth does not give up its treasure to the half-hearted. It hides it behind layers of stone and sweat so that only those with unwavering persistence will claim it. And persistence without purpose is like a lamp without oil. It burns out before the work is done. Henry Ford faced bankruptcy twice before the Model T became a household name. Edison's first 1,000 attempts at the light bulb failed. Carnegie's steel empire was nearly crushed in its infancy by financial panic. Each of these men could have walked away with their dignity intact, blamed the economy, blamed bad timing, blamed fate, but their definiteness of purpose made quitting impossible. When the door slammed shut, they built another door. When the bridge burned, they swam. When the map ended, they drew the rest themselves. You must decide if you are willing to do the same, because there will be days when no one believes in you, not your friends, not your family, not even your own mind. There will be nights when you question your sanity. And in those moments, the only thing that will keep you moving forward is the clarity of your purpose and the refusal to betray it. Hill often told the story of his own low points, the times when his dream of distilling the philosophy of success into a form anyone could follow seemed beyond his reach. He was broke, ridiculed, and tempted to give up more times than he could count. But every time he thought of quitting, he remembered the promise he had made to Andrew Carnegie to dedicate his life to uncovering and sharing the principles that make success inevitable. That promise became his anchor, his compass, and his fuel. Understand this. When you live without purpose, any excuse will do. When you live with purpose, no excuse is enough. Purpose turns sacrifice into investment. Purpose turns pain into preparation. Purpose turns waiting into sharpening. And perhaps most important, purpose attracts power. The moment you declare with conviction what you are going to achieve and begin to move toward it, you send a signal. It may not be visible, but it is felt. Opportunities, resources, and allies begin to appear. Some will call this coincidence. Hill called it the law of attraction in action, the magnetism of a mind that knows what it wants. But here's where most misunderstand this law. It is not enough to think about your goal. You must think, speak, act, and live in alignment with it every day. You cannot plant the seed and then wander off hoping it grows. You must tend to it, protect it, Feed it and fight for it until it bears fruit, and when it does, you will understand why so few reach the heights you are climbing toward. It is not because the heights are unreachable, it is because the climb requires more than most are willing to give, but you, with your definite purpose, will give it all, not because you are forced to, but because there is no other way to live. The moment you truly adopt definiteness of purpose, something profound begins to shift, not just in your outer circumstances, but in your inner world. It is as if the fog starts to lift. Where before you wandered through your days reacting to whatever appeared in front of you, now you begin to see life as a chessboard. Every move becomes deliberate. Every choice either takes you closer to your aim or pushes you further away. This is where the average man feels discomfort, because purpose forces a kind of brutal honesty. You can no longer pretend you don't have time. You can no longer say, "I'll get to it someday." Purpose is a mirror, and it reflects exactly how much of yourself you are truly investing. Napoleon Hill warned of the greatest enemy to definiteness of purpose, drifting. He described the drifter as a person who goes wherever the current of life pushes him, with no resistance, no control, no direction. A drifter says yes to everything because he stands for nothing. He confuses activity with progress. He mistakes motion for momentum. But the man of purpose, the woman of purpose, is different. They are selective. They say no far more than they say yes. They guard their time with the same intensity a jeweler guards a diamond. They understand that every hour given to something outside their purpose is an hour stolen from their destiny. Henry Ford's friends used to tease him for being obsessed with the automobile. They wanted him to join hunting trips, spend his evenings in social clubs, relax and enjoy life. But Ford knew that every hour spent chasing distractions was an hour lost in the work that would change the world. When the Model T rolled off the assembly line and the roads of America filled with cars, no one laughed anymore. And here is where wealth, mindset, and philosophy converge. Definiteness of purpose transforms time from something you spend into something you invest. It shifts your identity from a consumer of life to a creator of life. You stop asking, "What can I get?" and start asking, "What can I build that will matter?" Andrew Carnegie once told Hill that definiteness of purpose acts like a lodestar, a guiding star that never moves. You may adjust your sails, you may take a longer route to avoid a storm, but your star does not change. Your direction does not shift with the winds of opinion, and when you live like this, something magnetic happens. People begin to trust you, not just because of your words, but because of your consistency. A man who changes his mind every week inspires no confidence, but a man who has walked in the same direction for 10 years through fire and flood is a man others will follow into battle. Edison once remarked that persistence in a definite aim makes a man's success seem inevitable, even to his critics. It's not that the critics disappear, it's that your consistency outlasts their doubt. In time, the same voices that mocked you will point to you as proof that it can be done. But let me be clear, purpose is not about stubbornness for its own sake. It's not about refusing to adapt. It's about holding your destination steady while adjusting your methods as needed. Ford didn't cling to outdated parts when new ones worked better. Carnegie didn't resist new techniques that made steel stronger and cheaper. They evolved, but they evolved toward the same aim they had from the beginning. This is the kind of flexibility Hill respected, adaptation without surrender. It is how mountains are climbed. It is how empires are built. It is how ordinary men and women become millionaires in wealth and in spirit. And here's the part the modern world forgets. Definiteness of purpose is not something you do in your spare time. It is not a hobby. It is a way of life. It will shape the books you read, the people you associate with, the thoughts you allow to live in your mind. It will demand that you feed it daily with action, belief, and relentless focus. When you live this way, distractions lose their flavor. You no longer crave aimless entertainment because nothing compares to the satisfaction of progress toward your vision. You no longer envy the lives of others because you are too busy building the life you were meant to live. And soon, without realizing it, you will look around and see that the person you have become, disciplined, focused, unstoppable, is far more valuable than any amount of money you could have made by drifting. The fortune is not just in the bank account. The fortune is in the mind that created it. When you live with definiteness of purpose, you begin to notice that the world divides itself into two kinds of people. The first kind sees life as something that happens to them. They react, they wait, they drift. Their stories are filled with sentences that begin with, "I wish," "if only," and "someday." These are the spectators. They watch the game of life from the stands, criticizing the players, never daring to step onto the field themselves. The second kind, the rare kind, sees life as something they can shape. They are the architects of their own destiny. Their stories are filled with sentences that begin with, "I will," "I am," and "this is what I'm building." These are the creators, the builders, the movers. Napoleon Hill learned early in his study of success that the moment you choose a definite purpose, you leave the ranks of the spectators and step onto the field. And when you do, the game changes. Suddenly, every challenge is not a punishment, but a play in motion. Every setback is not the end, but part of the strategy. The question is no longer will I get there, but how will I adjust my route to get there? Henry Ford faced ridicule when he said he would build a car affordable enough for the average worker. The so-called experts told him it couldn't be done without sacrificing quality. The bankers refused him loans because they thought his vision was foolish. But Ford didn't see these obstacles as verdicts. He saw them as puzzles to be solved, and with each solution, the assembly line, the standardization of parts, he moved closer to his goal until his critics were forced to watch him win. This is the mindset definiteness of purpose breeds. You stop asking for permission. You stop waiting for the perfect moment. You create the moment. But here's what makes this philosophy as much about life as it is about wealth. When your purpose is clear, decisions become simple. Not always easy, but simple. If something moves you toward your goal, you say yes. If it moves you away, you say no. No hesitation. No internal debate. You begin to live by what Hill called a major definite decision, a commitment that is not up for renegotiation every time it becomes inconvenient. This is where wealth begins to intersect with character, because it's one thing to make $1 million, it's another to become the kind of person capable of keeping it, growing it, and using it well. Without character, money is fleeting. With character, money becomes a tool, an amplifier of your values. Andrew Carnegie knew this well. He didn't just build wealth, he built systems that outlived him. He gave away more money than most men will ever earn, but he did it with the same purpose that had guided his business, to strengthen society through knowledge and opportunity. That was his why, and when your why is powerful, your how becomes unstoppable. Hill often warned that drifting is the default state of mankind. If you don't actively steer your life toward a definite aim, the currents of fear, doubt, and other people's agendas will steer it for you. This is why so many intelligent, capable people end up broke, bitter, or bored. They never chose a destination, and if you never choose, you cannot arrive. When you adopt definiteness of purpose, you will be accused of being intense. People will say you're obsessed. They'll tell you to relax, to slow down, to enjoy life. But what they won't understand is that to you, the pursuit of your purpose is enjoying life. You are alive in the chase. You are fulfilled in the building. You wake each morning not to kill time, but to give birth to another piece of your vision. This habit is not for the faint of heart. It will cost you comfort. It will cost you some friendships. It will cost you the approval of those who would rather you drift with them than climb without them. But it will give you something no drift can ever provide, the quiet, unshakable knowledge that you are living exactly as you were meant to live. And here's the paradox Hill understood. When you focus your entire being on one purpose, the rewards come from every direction, not just in wealth, but in health, in relationships, in the satisfaction of knowing you have become a master of your own mind. This is the habit that doesn't just make millionaires, it makes fulfilled human beings. The beauty of definiteness of purpose is that it doesn't just change what you achieve, it changes who you become on the way to achieving it. Most people approach success backward. They chase results first, hoping the process will shape them into the kind of person who can handle those results. But Napoleon Hill saw that the greatest fortunes, both in money and in life, came to those who first became the person capable of holding them, and then let the results flow from that transformation. When you commit to a single, unwavering aim, you begin to shed everything that doesn't belong to the person you are becoming. You start noticing how certain habits weaken you, how certain environments drain you, how certain voices in your life only speak fear into your mind. And with each step forward, you let them go, not with bitterness, but with clarity. Because you understand that what you are building cannot be supported by weak foundations. This is why Hill warned that the road to success is often a lonely one. It is not because you must reject people, it is because the higher you climb, the smaller the group becomes who can breathe the same air without gasping. At the bottom of the mountain, the crowd is large and noisy. Halfway up, the air thins and the crowd shrinks. Near the peak, it is quiet, but the view is worth every step. Look at Edison in his laboratory, working long nights with only a few trusted assistants while the world slept. Look at Ford, poring over blueprints with a small team that believed in his vision when the rest of the world laughed. Look at Carnegie, spending hours alone mapping out deals and strategies that would shape the steel industry. These men were not antisocial, they were selective. They knew that their purpose required more of them than casual company could provide. Definiteness of purpose teaches you the discipline of focus, but it also teaches you the discipline of association. You begin to choose your company the way a jeweler chooses gemstones, with care, precision, and an eye for long-term value. You seek out people whose goals align with yours, whose energy strengthens rather than weakens you, whose presence accelerates your climb instead of slowing your steps. Hill called this the mastermind principle, the idea that when two or more minds work together in harmony toward a definite purpose, they create a third, invisible force of intelligence and power. This is not just about networking or meeting influential people, It is about intentionally surrounding yourself with those who share your intensity, who see your vision not as too big, but as too small, who challenge you to think bigger and act bolder. The truth is, your purpose will demand more than you can give alone. You will need allies. You will need wisdom you do not yet have, skills you have not yet mastered, perspectives you have not yet considered. And when you have a definite purpose, these allies appear, drawn not to you as a person, but to the vision you carry. But here's the warning Hill would give you. The same magnetism that draws allies will also attract opposition. Some will be threatened by your focus. Some will resent your refusal to drift with them. Some will actively try to pull you off your path, not always out of malice, but because your determination reminds them of their own lack of it. You must not take this personally. It is simply the nature of the climb, and so you keep going. You refine your plan. You protect your mind from the noise. You build your alliances with care. You keep your eyes fixed on that one aim, knowing that every day you live with purpose, you are separating yourself from the masses who will never know what it feels like to live with that kind of clarity. Because this is the ultimate truth of Hill's discovery. Definiteness of purpose is not just about getting what you want. It is about becoming the kind of person who can be trusted with it by the world, by the people you lead, and most importantly, by yourself. There will come a moment in your pursuit, and it will come sooner than you think, when the goal you set will feel impossibly far away. Not just difficult, not just uncertain, impossibly far. The mountain will seem taller than you imagined, the climb steeper, the air thinner. This is the moment where most people surrender. It's not the first obstacle that breaks them. It's not even the second or the third. It's the long stretch of the climb where progress feels invisible, where you work for months or years and see little return, where the applause is silent and the world seems not to care whether you keep going or stop. Napoleon Hill called this the testing ground of persistence. It is nature's way of separating the dreamers from the doers, the talkers from the builders, because anyone can burn with enthusiasm at the beginning. But to keep burning when the winds of doubt blow against you, that is the mark of a person destined for something extraordinary. Andrew Carnegie faced this early in his career. He worked long hours in the telegraph office, often eating and sleeping at his desk, saving every penny he could. He had no wealth, no influence, no guarantees, but he had a clear purpose: to rise in the steel industry and use his fortune to improve the world. That purpose gave meaning to his long days and sleepless nights. It was the reason he didn't quit when others around him did. Henry Ford once said, "There is no man living who isn't capable of doing more than he thinks he can do." That is the power of a definite aim. It demands more of you than you thought possible, and then it shows you that you can deliver. And yet this isn't just about grinding through hardship. It's about the transformation that happens while you grind. You learn to endure criticism without bending. You learn to outlast delays without losing momentum. You learn to treat failure not as a signal to stop, but as a lesson to refine your strategy. This is why Napoleon Hill insisted that the habit of definiteness of purpose was inseparable from the habit of persistence. Purpose tells you where you are going. Persistence gets you there. Look at Thomas Edison's 10,000 failed experiments. Most people only remember the moment the light bulb shone, but years of failure came before that day. Without purpose, those failures would have been unbearable. Without persistence, those failures would have been final. But with both, the aim and the endurance, the result was inevitable. Here's something the modern world often gets wrong. People love to talk about motivation, but motivation is fragile. It rises and falls with your mood, with the weather, with the opinions of others. Purpose is stronger. Purpose doesn't care how you feel in the morning. It doesn't care if it's raining, if you're tired, if no one is watching. Purpose demands that you act, because it is not tied to emotion. It is tied to identity. And this is where Napoleon Hill's philosophy becomes life-changing. When you make your purpose part of your identity, quitting becomes impossible without betraying yourself. You can let down others and recover, but to let down yourself, to abandon the very thing that defines you, that is a wound that will never heal clean. So you keep moving. Even if it's an inch at a time, you move. Even if the applause never comes, you move. Even if the reward feels far away, you move, because you understand that every step, no matter how small, is a brick in the fortress you are building. And one day, without warning, the landscape will change. You will look back and realize you've crossed the impossible distance. Opportunities that once seemed out of reach will now be within your grasp. And those who doubted you will tell the story differently. They will say they always knew you'd make it, but you will know the truth. It was not their belief that brought you here. It was yours. It was the habit of holding one aim above all else and refusing to let go when the road grew dark. One of the most overlooked effects of definiteness of purpose is the way it sharpens your decision-making. Napoleon Hill observed that every successful person he studied had learned to make decisions quickly and change them slowly, if at all. In contrast, unsuccessful people made decisions slowly and changed them often, usually at the first sign of discomfort or opposition. Why? Because when you have a single clear aim, you already know the criteria by which every decision will be judged. Does this move me toward my purpose or away from it? That one question cuts through hesitation like a blade. Henry Ford was famous for his decisiveness. Once, when his advisors urged him to abandon the Model T and produce a variety of car models to match his competitors, he refused. He had decided that his mission was to make an affordable, reliable car for the masses, and until that mission was complete, he would not dilute his focus. This single-mindedness earned him criticism in the short term, but cemented his empire in the long term. This is what Hill meant when he said that definiteness of purpose eliminates confusion. Without a clear aim, you will always be torn between options, swayed by trends, distracted by every glittering possibility. But when your aim is fixed, the noise fades. You stop chasing every opportunity and start seizing only the ones that matter. This does not mean you become stubborn or blind to new information. The great achievers Hill studied were flexible in methods, but unshakable in purpose. Ford eventually adapted to changing markets, but only after his main aim was fulfilled. Carnegie shifted strategies in the steel industry when technology evolved, but never shifted from his goal of industry dominance and philanthropic impact. A definite purpose becomes the compass by which you navigate uncertainty. When the seas are calm, it keeps you on course. When the storm rages, it keeps you from being thrown off into chaos. And here's where the link to wealth becomes undeniable. Money moves toward decisiveness. Opportunities flow to those who can recognize and act on them before the crowd. Indecision, on the other hand, is expensive. It costs time, momentum, and credibility. Andrew Carnegie used to say that once he had gathered enough facts to make a choice, he acted without delay, because waiting for total certainty was just another name for fear. Fear is the enemy of fortune. It whispers, wait until you're ready. But readiness is a myth. You prepare by acting, not by waiting. This is why Hill emphasized that decisiveness is not a personality trait. It is a habit, born of clarity. And clarity comes from knowing exactly what you want, why you want it, and refusing to waste energy on anything else. Think of your mind like a sword. If you keep swinging it at every target, it will dull. If you strike only at the right targets, it stays sharp and deadly. Definiteness of purpose teaches you to strike with precision. But there's a deeper reason this matters, one that goes beyond money, beyond business, beyond career. Every indecision in life is a withdrawal from your own self-trust. Every time you delay a choice you know you should make, you weaken your own belief in your ability to act. And self-trust is the foundation of confidence, courage, and influence. The man or woman of definite purpose walks differently, speaks differently, commands attention without asking for it. Not because they know all the answers, but because they know exactly where they are going, and people will always follow someone who walks with certainty. This is why the habit Hill discovered is so rare and so powerful. It doesn't just point you toward wealth. It makes you magnetic. It draws resources, allies, and opportunities to you because the world is starving for certainty, and you become a source of it. And here's the paradox. Once you have it, you realize that the purpose itself is worth more than the rewards it brings. Because even if every dollar were taken from you, the habit would remain, and with it you could build it all again. Napoleon Hill often said you have absolute control over only one thing, your own mind. And if definiteness of purpose is the habit that builds fortunes, then control of the mind is the fortress that protects them. Without it, even the clearest aim will crumble under the weight of fear, doubt, and outside influence. The truth is simple but brutal. You cannot hold a definite purpose if your thoughts are at the mercy of every passing mood, every piece of gossip, every whisper of discouragement. A mind that is open to every negative suggestion is like a fortress with its gates wide open. Sooner or later, something will come through that destroys what you've built. This is why Hill placed so much emphasis on guarding your mental environment. He saw how the great achievers of his time were ruthless about what they allowed into their minds. Edison avoided chronic complainers. Ford ignored newspapers that focused only on failure and tragedy. Carnegie refused to dwell on obstacles longer than it took to solve them. They were not hiding from reality. They were protecting their mental state so they could create a better one. Think of your mind as fertile soil. If you do not plant the seeds of your own choosing, weeds will grow. The world will throw in seeds of fear, jealousy, resentment, and hopelessness without your permission. If you let them take root, they will choke the life out of your purpose. Hill believed that a definite purpose must be fed daily with thoughts that strengthen it. Not occasionally, not when you feel like it. Daily, that means reading books, listening to voices, and surrounding yourself with people who remind you of what is possible, not of what is impossible. But controlling your mind is not just about what you allow in, it's about what you allow to stay. Fear will knock on the door, doubt will whisper in the dark, criticism will try to plant its roots in your heart. You cannot stop them from arriving, but you can refuse to give them room to live. Andrew Carnegie faced constant criticism in his rise to power. Rivals accused him of overreaching, of exploiting his workers, of dreaming too big. Some of the criticism was fair, some was not, but Carnegie did not allow it to paralyze him. He took from it what could be used to improve, discarded the rest, and returned his mind to the task at hand. This is the discipline of mental control, to acknowledge challenges without being consumed by them, to hear criticism without being ruled by it, to notice fear without surrendering to it. Hill warned of the 6 basic fears that hold people back: the fear of poverty, criticism, ill health, loss of love, old age, and death. He called them ghosts because they are illusions, powerful only if you believe in them. A definite purpose drives these ghosts away because it fills the mind with something stronger, desire so great that it leaves no room for fear to linger. Henry Ford once remarked, "Obstacles are those frightful things you see when you take your eyes off your goal." That is mental control in its simplest form, keeping your eyes where they belong. The fear may still exist at the edges of your vision, but it cannot dominate your mind if your gaze stays fixed on the summit you are climbing toward. And here lies the deeper truth. When you master your mind, the world cannot master you. You can be stripped of wealth, resources, and position, but if you still hold the habit of purpose and the discipline of mental control, you can rebuild, because the true asset is you. That is why Hill insisted that wealth begins in the mind long before it appears in the bank. It begins with a decision to think in terms of possibility instead of limitation, progress instead of retreat, solutions instead of excuses. And once that decision is made, it must be defended fiercely, daily, without apology, because your purpose is only as strong as the mind that carries it. Napoleon Hill often said you have absolute control over only one thing, your own mind. And if definiteness of purpose is the habit that builds fortunes, then control of the mind is the fortress that protects them. Without it, even the clearest aim will crumble under the weight of fear, doubt, and outside influence. The truth is simple but brutal. You cannot hold a definite purpose if your thoughts are at the mercy of every passing mood, every piece of gossip, every whisper of discouragement. A mind that is open to every negative suggestion is like a fortress with its gates wide open. Sooner or later, something will come through that destroys what you've built. This is why Hill placed so much emphasis on guarding your mental environment. He saw how the great achievers of his time were ruthless about what they allowed into their minds. Edison avoided chronic complainers. Ford ignored newspapers that focused only on failure and tragedy. Carnegie refused to dwell on obstacles longer than it took to solve them. They were not hiding from reality. They were protecting their mental state so they could create a better one. Think of your mind as fertile soil. If you do not plant the seeds of your own choosing, weeds will grow. The world will throw in seeds of fear, jealousy, resentment, and hopelessness without your permission. If you let them take root, they will choke the life out of your purpose. Hill believed that a definite purpose must be fed daily with thoughts that strengthen it. Not occasionally, not when you feel like it. Daily, that means reading books, listening to voices, and surrounding yourself with people who remind you of what is possible, not of what is impossible. But controlling your mind is not just about what you allow in, it's about what you allow to stay. Fear will knock on the door, doubt will whisper in the dark, criticism will try to plant its roots in your heart. You cannot stop them from arriving, but you can refuse to give them room to live. Andrew Carnegie faced constant criticism in his rise to power. Rivals accused him of overreaching, of exploiting his workers, of dreaming too big. Some of the criticism was fair, some was not, but Carnegie did not allow it to paralyze him. He took from it what could be used to improve, discarded the rest, and returned his mind to the task at hand. This is the discipline of mental control, to acknowledge challenges without being consumed by them, to hear criticism without being ruled by it, to notice fear without surrendering to it. Hill warned of the 6 basic fears that hold people back: the fear of poverty, criticism, ill health, loss of love, old age, and death. He called them ghosts because they are illusions, powerful only if you believe in them. A definite purpose drives these ghosts away because it fills the mind with something stronger, desire so great that it leaves no room for fear to linger. Henry Ford once remarked, "Obstacles are those frightful things you see when you take your eyes off your goal." That is mental control in its simplest form, keeping your eyes where they belong. The fear may still exist at the edges of your vision, but it cannot dominate your mind if your gaze stays fixed on the summit you are climbing toward. And here lies the deeper truth. When you master your mind, the world cannot master you. You can be stripped of wealth, resources, and position, but if you still hold the habit of purpose and the discipline of mental control, you can rebuild because the true asset is you. That is why Hill insisted that wealth begins in the mind long before it appears in the bank. It begins with a decision to think in terms of possibility instead of limitation, progress instead of retreat, solutions instead of excuses. And once that decision is made, it must be defended fiercely, daily, without apology, because your purpose is only as strong as the mind that carries it. Napoleon Hill taught that no purpose, no matter how definite, and no faith, no matter how unshakable, can succeed without a plan. He called it organized planning, the deliberate transformation of a vision into a step-by-step method for making it real. Without it, purpose remains a dream, and faith remains a feeling. With it, they become a force that moves the world. Hill learned this truth from the men he studied. Andrew Carnegie didn't just decide to dominate the steel industry. He mapped it. He identified the resources, the partnerships, the locations, the markets, and the methods. He built timelines and assembled the best minds to fill in the gaps in his own knowledge. Every step of his fortune was written, discussed, revised, and executed like a military campaign. Henry Ford didn't just imagine the Model T. He designed the processes that would make it affordable and reliable. The assembly line wasn't an accident. It was the product of organized thought and careful testing. Every bolt, every gear, every motion of the worker's hand was measured for efficiency. It was not luck, it was planning, sharpened by purpose and backed by faith. Hill's point was simple: if you can describe your purpose but cannot describe your plan, you are not ready. A goal without a plan is a wish, and wishes are powerless in the marketplace of life. Organized planning starts with breaking your aim into specific actions. Not vague intentions like work harder or get more clients, but measurable, time-bound steps. What will I do today, this week, this month to advance my purpose? This level of clarity forces accountability, but planning alone is not enough. Hill warned against paralysis by analysis, the trap of endless preparation with no execution. The great achievers planned, yes, but they also acted. They adjusted their plans as they went, using feedback from results, not from fear. This is why Hill advised assembling a mastermind group as part of organized planning. No matter how intelligent or capable you are, there will be blind spots in your thinking. A carefully chosen team of minds, united by your definite aim, can spot flaws, find shortcuts, and strengthen the plan in ways you cannot alone. Carnegie's brain trust included financial experts, production managers, and engineers. Ford's included designers, mechanics, and marketing minds. Edison's laboratory was filled with scientists, machinists, and assistants who could translate his ideas into tangible inventions. Each man knew that his purpose was his own, but the plan to reach it could be improved by others who shared the vision. And here's where organized planning becomes more than just business strategy. It forces you to confront reality. When you put your plan on paper, you see clearly where you lack resources, skills, or connections. For the drifter, this is discouraging. For the man or woman of purpose, it is energizing, because every gap becomes a target to fill, every weakness a challenge to strengthen. Hill insisted that your plan must be flexible, not in purpose, that stays fixed, but in method. If one approach fails, replace it with another. If a resource disappears, find a substitute. If a door closes, look for a window. The plan changes, the purpose does not. And here is the hidden reward. When you live with definiteness of purpose, backed by faith and executed through organized planning, you no longer feel at the mercy of luck or fate. You begin to see life as something you can design, direct, and build. Every action has a place in the blueprint. Every decision has a purpose. And every day, no matter how small the progress, you are building towards something that will outlast you. The world calls this discipline. Hill called it the architecture of success. Napoleon Hill was relentless on one point. A plan without immediate action is worthless. He saw countless men and women with brilliant ideas, detailed blueprints, and lofty ambitions, all of which rotted in notebooks because they waited for the right moment. That moment never came. Hill warned that hesitation is the silent killer of purpose. It disguises itself as prudence, as careful thinking, as preparation. But more often than not, it is fear in disguise. The fear of failure, of criticism, of imperfection. Here is the truth the great achievers understood. You will never feel ready. Andrew Carnegie wasn't ready when he took his first job in the telegraph office. Henry Ford wasn't ready when he built his first car in a shed. Thomas Edison wasn't ready when he began experimenting with electric light. They started anyway. Hill's philosophy here is clear. Do it now. Not recklessly, not without thought, but without delay. Action is the lifeblood of purpose. The longer you wait, the colder the trail becomes. Opportunities that are alive today may be gone tomorrow, replaced by others or by nothing at all. There is a force that wakes up when you take the first step. Call it momentum, call it providence, call it the law of attraction in motion, but it will not move for the one who stands still. Only action has the power to trigger it. Hill observed that successful people often act before they have every detail figured out. They move forward on partial information, trusting their ability to adapt and correct course along the way. This doesn't mean acting blindly. It means understanding that action itself is a form of learning. Think of a ship leaving port. The captain cannot wait until every wave and gust of wind has been predicted. He leaves with the map and the destination in mind, adjusting the sails as the journey unfolds. The man who waits for perfect sailing conditions will still be in harbor when the tide of opportunity has long passed. This is why Hill placed such value on the habit of decision. Once the decision is made, action must follow immediately. Otherwise, the decision rots into regret, and regret is the heaviest burden a man can carry. Action also builds faith. You cannot talk yourself into full belief in your purpose by thinking alone. Belief deepens when you see yourself moving, creating, producing results, even small ones. Every action becomes proof that you are not merely wishing for your goal, you are building it. Hill's own life proved this. When Andrew Carnegie challenged him to organize and write the philosophy of success, Hill had no money, no publisher, and no assurance that the work would be accepted. But he began immediately. He scheduled interviews, traveled to meet successful men, and started compiling notes before he had even formalized the entire plan. Had he waited for the perfect conditions, the work might never have existed. Here's another truth. Action is the cure for fear. Fear thrives in inactivity, in the mind's quiet moments where it can whisper every reason not to proceed. But when you move, fear loses its grip. You replace "what if I fail" with "what's the next step." Hill liked to say, you can't build a reputation on what you are going to do. The world measures you not by your intentions, but by your results. And results require movement, now not later. So once you have your definite purpose, once you have built your faith and organized your plan, you must take that first step immediately. Make the call, write the letter, schedule the meeting, build the prototype. Do something, anything that transforms the idea from thought into action. Because in the end, purpose is not proven by the clarity of your vision, the beauty of your plan, or the strength of your belief. It is proven by the life you build with your hands, your mind, and your courage, one decisive action at a time. Napoleon Hill believed that the truest measure of a person's commitment to their purpose comes when action collides with resistance. He called this persistence through adversity, the phase where your resolve is tested not once, but again and again until you either prove worthy of your goal or surrender it. At the beginning, the excitement of a fresh purpose can carry you. You have energy, optimism, the thrill of possibility. But all great climbs have stretches where the path is steep, the air is thin, and every step feels heavier than the last. It is here that most people turn back, not because they can't go on, but because they convince themselves it isn't worth it. Hill was blunt about this. Most great people have attained their greatest success just one step beyond their greatest failure. That step, the one beyond the breaking point, is the defining moment. And you can only take it if your purpose is stronger than your discomfort. Think of Thomas Edison again. By the time he reached his 5,000th failed attempt at a working filament for the light bulb, no one would have blamed him for quitting. But Edison didn't measure progress by how far he still had to go. He measured it by how much he had learned. Each failure narrowed the possibilities, bringing him closer to the right answer. That mindset is persistence in its purest form, seeing each setback as a stepping stone rather than a stumbling block. Henry Ford faced repeated bankruptcies before the Model T. Factories failed, investors pulled out, newspapers mocked him, but Ford's definiteness of purpose anchored him. He refused to see failure as permanent. Instead, he treated each collapse as proof of what needed refining, not as a verdict on his vision. Andrew Carnegie faced fierce competition in the steel industry. Price wars, labor disputes, economic downturns, any of these could have broken a weaker man, but Carnegie understood that persistence was not about blindly pushing forward without thought. It was about intelligently adjusting while refusing to abandon the goal. Hill identified a critical difference between temporary defeat and permanent failure. Defeat is a signal to change your approach. Failure is the decision to quit. The first can strengthen you, the second ends you. Persistence through adversity requires three qualities. 1, a clear vision, so you know exactly what you're fighting for. 2, an unshakable belief, so you trust that the fight is worth it. 3, a willingness to adapt, so you can change tactics without abandoning your aim. Without vision, you forget why you started. Without belief, you crumble under pressure. Without adaptation, you break against obstacles instead of flowing around them. And here is the hidden gift of adversity. It sharpens you. It forces you to dig deeper, to develop strengths you didn't know you had, to prove to yourself that your purpose is not just a passing fancy, but a part of who you are. Hill saw this again and again in the lives of the people he studied. Their greatest breakthroughs were born in the moments they most wanted to walk away. Persistence is not glamorous. It is not the roar of the crowd or the flash of victory. It is the quiet, unseen choice you make at midnight when the world is asleep to keep going one more day. It is working in the shadows, trusting that the light will come. It is planting seeds that may take years to bear fruit and tending them as if the harvest were guaranteed. Hill warned that without persistence, even the most brilliant plan backed by the strongest faith will collapse, because the road to any great purpose will be littered with obstacles designed to ask you one question: how badly do you want it? If your answer is anything less than more than anything else, you will stop. But if your answer is yes, if your purpose is tied to your very identity, you will push through storms that would drown anyone else. And when you do, you will find that the victory is sweeter not because it was easy, but because you earned it in the fire. Napoleon Hill believed that no man ever achieved greatness entirely alone. Yes, definiteness of purpose begins within you. Yes, persistence must come from your own will. But there is a principle, one he considered so vital that he called it the driving force behind nearly every fortune in America: the mastermind. The mastermind, as Hill defined it, is the coordination of knowledge and effort between two or more people working toward a definite purpose in a spirit of harmony. It is not just a meeting, not just a business partnership, not just friendship. It is a deliberate alliance, a fusion of minds that creates something greater than any of the individuals could achieve alone. Hill saw this principle in Andrew Carnegie's rise. Carnegie was a brilliant strategist, but he did not know everything about steel production, engineering, transportation, or finance. He surrounded himself with experts in each area, men who brought knowledge, skills, and perspectives he lacked. Together, they formed a brain trust capable of solving problems faster and seizing opportunities sooner than any single man could have. Henry Ford did the same. His genius was in designing processes and systems, but he aligned himself with mechanics, chemists, marketers, and financial minds who could strengthen the parts of his vision that he could not execute alone. Ford understood that the ego that tries to do it all alone builds small things slowly, while the leader who seeks strength in others builds great things fast. The mastermind principle rests on one truth: when minds meet in harmony for a shared goal, they generate a third invisible mind, an energy, an intelligence, a force that is greater than the sum of its parts. Hill compared it to electricity, unseen but capable of powering the machinery of success. But there is a key condition: harmony. A mastermind cannot function in an atmosphere of jealousy, distrust, or conflicting agendas. Every member must be committed to the shared purpose. Every member must bring value, whether it's knowledge, connections, skills, or resources. And every member must be willing to give as much as they receive. This is why Hill warned that you must choose your mastermind partners with the same care you choose the blueprint for your dream. One wrong partner can corrode the spirit of the group, drain its energy, and pull everyone off course. But the right group can pull you through challenges that would crush you alone. There is another power in the mastermind: accountability. When you state your goals aloud to a group you respect, you feel the weight of your words. You no longer answer only to yourself. You answer to those who have invested their time and energy into your vision. This pressure is not a burden, it's fuel. It forces you to keep your promises, to follow through, to rise to the standard you've declared. Hill himself used the mastermind principle while developing Think and Grow Rich. He worked with editors, researchers, and business leaders who refined his ideas, challenged his assumptions, and kept him moving forward when obstacles appeared. Without them, the book might have remained a set of private notes. The modern world often glorifies the self-made man, but Hill dismantled that myth. No one is truly self-made. The most successful people are team-made, idea-made, mastermind-made. They stand on the shoulders of those who believed in the same vision and were willing to climb together. And the beauty of the mastermind is that it not only multiplies what you can achieve, it multiplies who you can become. You absorb the habits, the thinking, the energy of those around you. If your circle is made of disciplined, driven, high-minded people, you will rise with them. If your circle drifts, complains, and quits, you will eventually do the same. Hill's challenge is simple. If you wish to become a millionaire in wealth and in spirit, ask yourself, who is in my mastermind? Who challenges me? Who strengthens me? Who refuses to let me settle for less than my purpose demands? Because in the end, even the clearest aim, the strongest faith, and the boldest persistence can be accelerated or sabotaged by the company you keep. The mastermind you build can be the wind at your back or the weight on your shoulders. Choose wisely, and you will find that your purpose no longer rests on your strength alone. It will be carried by many, and in that unity there is unstoppable power. Napoleon Hill discovered something else in his decades of studying the most successful men of his era. They all shared a rare and decisive habit. They made decisions quickly and acted on them without hesitation. In Hill's words, People who fail to accumulate money without exception have the habit of reaching decisions, if at all, very slowly, and of changing these decisions quickly and often. The difference might sound small, but in practice, it is a chasm. Most people live in a state of mental hesitation, weighing the same choices over and over until the moment to act has passed. They think they are being cautious. In truth, they are being paralyzed. The great achievers were not reckless. They gathered facts quickly, considered them carefully, and then moved. They understood that opportunity rarely knocks twice, and that delay is often the silent grave of a dream. Andrew Carnegie made the decision to invest in steel at a time when many considered it a risky, unstable industry. Once he decided, he poured his energy, resources, and reputation into that path without wavering. He didn't revisit the decision every few months. He adapted his methods, but the decision itself was final. Henry Ford decided that his life's mission was to build a car for the average American. When competitors pushed him to diversify into luxury models or unrelated ventures, he said no. His decision was made, and he would stay the course until his aim was fulfilled. Thomas Edison faced constant pressure to abandon projects that weren't producing results fast enough, but his decisions were anchored in his definiteness of purpose, not in the opinions of the impatient. He stayed with the work because he knew that results were inevitable if the purpose was clear and the persistence unwavering. Hill pointed out that indecision is closely linked to fear of criticism, fear of making the wrong choice, fear of taking responsibility. When you fear criticism, you invite delay, and delay erodes faith, momentum, and opportunity. Making quick, firm decisions does not mean ignoring advice or acting without thought. It means having the courage to commit once you have enough information to move forward and the discipline to stand by that commitment unless new facts demand a change. Here's why this matters for wealth. Money is attracted to speed, not speed for the sake of recklessness, but speed in recognizing and capturing an opening before it closes. Opportunities are living things. They grow, they fade, they vanish. The person who waits for absolute certainty will always be left with the scraps after someone else has seized the main prize. Hill himself had to practice this in his own career. When Andrew Carnegie challenged him to spend 20 years studying the secrets of success and compiling them into a philosophy for the public, Hill could have hesitated. He could have asked for guarantees. Instead, he made an immediate decision. Yes, that decision shaped the rest of his life and created a body of work that has outlived him by nearly a century. But there is another side to decision-making that Hill warned about. Once you make the decision, act immediately. The gap between deciding and acting is the breeding ground for fear and doubt. Every hour you delay after making a choice allows hesitation to creep in and steal your resolve. The millionaires Hill studied didn't just decide, they executed. They didn't say, I will start next month. They said, I will start today, even if starting was as small as making one phone call, writing one letter, or drafting one page. Because movement creates momentum, and momentum is the ally of purpose. Hill's advice was simple. Train yourself to decide and act faster than your doubts can talk you out of it. Do this often enough and it becomes a habit, a reflex. Your mind will learn to recognize the right choice quickly, to trust itself, and to move without hesitation. And this is where definiteness of purpose, faith, persistence, and decision come together. When they operate as one, you stop chasing opportunities and start creating them. You become the person others look to when the moment to act arrives, the one who moves first, moves fast, and moves with conviction. Napoleon Hill saved one of his most powerful lessons for last, because without it, every other principle crumbles. It is the battle that is fought not in boardrooms, not in markets, not in the public eye, but in the silent chambers of your own mind. It is the battle against fear. Hill called them the 6 ghosts of fear, the unseen enemies that stalk every dream. The fear of poverty, the fear of criticism, the fear of ill health, the fear of loss of love, the fear of old age, the fear of death. He called them ghosts because they have no real substance. They cannot touch you unless you give them power. And yet these ghosts have killed more dreams than failure ever has. The fear of poverty stops people from taking the leap toward their purpose. The fear of criticism keeps them silent when they should speak, hidden when they should shine. The fear of ill health robs them of energy through constant worry. The fear of loss of love keeps them chained to relationships that suffocate their growth. The fear of old age convinces them they are too late to begin, and the fear of death convinces them that life is too short to risk chasing something bold. Hill's message was not to pretend fear doesn't exist, but to master it. You master fear the same way you master anything else, by facing it, understanding it, and refusing to let it dictate your choices. Every great figure in Hill's research faced fear. Carnegie feared failure. Ford feared financial ruin. Edison feared public ridicule, but they acted anyway. The difference was that their definiteness of purpose was louder than the ghosts whispering in their ears. Fear feeds on hesitation. It grows in silence, in delay, in the moments you stand still instead of moving toward your goal. But when you act, fear shrinks. When you speak, fear loses its voice. When you confront it directly, it evaporates under the light of truth. And here is the truth Hill left for all who would listen. The richest rewards in life are not given to those who feel no fear. They are given to those who march forward in spite of it. Imagine your life if every decision you made came not from fear but from faith. Imagine what you could build if every time the ghosts appeared you smiled and stepped forward anyway. The fortune you want, the freedom you seek, the impact you dream of, they are waiting on the other side of that step. So here is the charge Hill would give you now. Decide exactly what you want. Make it your definite purpose. Build unshakable faith in it. Organize your plan. Act without delay. Persist through every setback. Surround yourself with a mastermind of allies. Make firm decisions and stand by them. And when the ghosts appear, and they will, look them in the eye, thank them for reminding you of the stakes, and then walk right past them. Because the truth is, you will not be remembered for the fears you had. You will be remembered for the fears you conquered. One day, someone will tell your story. Let it be the story of the ordinary person who became extraordinary. The one who built wealth, influence, and a life of purpose not because it was easy, but because they refused to drift, refused to quit, and refused to let fear have the final word. That is Napoleon Hill's secret. That is the habit that turns ordinary people into millionaires, in their wallets, in their minds, and in their souls. Now, the question is no longer whether it works. The only question left is, will you do it?